The points leaders in Winston Championship drag racing have been tough. In Top Fuel, Scott Coletta and crew chief Dick LaHaye have dominated with 4 event wins in a row. In Funny Car, it is all John Force. After a slow start, Force has come on strong by winning 6 events, and as John will tell you, crew chief Austin Coyle has things figured out. And in Pro Stock, the Wayne County team has found success with the 2-pronged attack. Dual dodges driven by 2 of the best in the sport. Right now, Scott Jeffrey on tops the points, but Darrell Alderman is not far behind. Welcome, everyone, to NHRA Winston Championship Drag Racing Competition from the 7th Annual Northwest Nationals at Seattle International Raceway in Seattle, Washington. Hi, everybody. I'm Dave McClelland, and this is one of those weekends at Seattle International Raceway that racers have dreams about, and I mean they are good dreams. There is intermittent cloud cover, which keeps the racetrack cool and the temperatures down. Thus, they can get a lot of performance. But from time to time, we get a lot of sun, and that pleases a jam-packed crowd that has come for the Northwest Nationals. There's some great action taking place in Top Fuel Eliminator. For that story, here's my pal Steve Evans.
Well, Mac, in baseball parlance, Scott Coletta has thrown 4 1/4 perfect games working on number 5. And that has thrown the strategy of Joe Amato way, way off. Joe believes in consistent running, not winning every race. Well, Jimmy Prock here in Seattle threw that plan right out the window and hopped this baby up. In fact, they qualified number 3, very close to the top of the list. Then earlier today in round number 1 against Del Worsham, a winning 480. But this happened. Let's let the in-car camera speak for itself. Imagine the forces it takes to lift that heavy supercharger completely off the engine. Joe, a lot of restraints just weren't enough.
Well, they got the blower bags on them and everything, and that's what the whole deal is. And it looks like the wing and all is okay, so we'll just go back and fix it and try and figure what happened. Try and go for round 2.
There'll be a new bullet in this one, I guarantee you. Amato and Prock lost the entire fuel system, which can be the secret. Be interesting to see what they can do with Connie Coletta in round number 2. Now, for all you Eddie Hill fans, rejoice. He came in here, the Nuclear Banana qualified number 1 at 478, but on his final qualifying pass, he tried to visit Jupiter. The car came down very hard, bent the chassis, and that may have contributed to a first-round loss for Eddie today. Eddie Hill's season from hell continues, and your blowover yesterday, number 1 qualifier, what, tire shake first round?
Yeah, bad tire shake. It was kicking them loose and shook me so bad it blurred my vision again, and by the time I could see again, he was long gone.
You just need to put 2 runs together somewhere.
I wish it had happened. I wish it had happened. Very frustrating.
Yeah, we can tell. Well, Eddie Hill fans, you'll have to wait till another day, but beleaguered Kenny Bernstein fans, this may be the day. The first stop his rig made wasn't at the racetrack. It was in Tacoma at Alice Wendell's chassis shop, where they picked up this brand new 300-inch masterpiece to replace the short car you saw runner-up here on ESPN from Sonoma, California. New car blues? Well, not exactly. In round 1 against Bob Vandegrip, 301 miles an hour. More importantly, low elapsed time of the day at 4.79. It's Bernstein against Scott Coletta in just a few minutes, and the Bud King may end his streak. Well, that's all the good news. Here's a little bad. They had to borrow a wing from Pat Austin. They cracked their original one on that 479 run. And the sun is coming out now. That good weather may be coming to an end. It's getting pretty hot. The racetrack will suffer for it. And Dave, just exactly what is the funny car side of things?
Steve, there is some consolation for the funny car fan who'd like to see somebody else besides John Force do well in this category of competition. In fact, here at Seattle after the first round, there's a lot of racers running well. Chuck Etchells qualified number 1 at a 5:05. He won his first round race at a 5:14, putting away a tire-smoking Whit Bazemore. The driver of this car, the McDonald's Oldsmobile, Cruz Pedregon at the wheel also ran a 5:14. Believe it or not, 4 cars out of the winning 8 ran 5:14s in that first round, which saw the slowest time of the round by Kenji Okazaki at a 5:17. Incredible performance indeed. But who should have the quick time of the first round of eliminations? None other than the Dominator himself, John Force, as he easily disposed of a troubled Gary Clapshaw. Force is first to give credit to his crew chief, Austin Coyle, for the performance of the Castrol Chevy Lumina. Now for the story in Pro Stock, let's again join Steve Evans.
Mac, as we get ready to go into the Pro Stock Final Four, I am in Jim Yates's Pontiac pits for a very good reason I'll talk about in just a moment. But first, back to the beginning. In qualifying, Darrell Alderman in the now fully developed Dodge Avenger, only the second 6-second run in Pro Stock history, 6:99. But then in round 1 today, his teammate and points leader, Scott Jeffrion in the Dodge Daytona, gets hole-shotted by Butch Abbott. What a shocker. Points-wise, that stings.
Yeah, that hurts a lot. But, you know, what are you going to do? We've had good days and bad days out here, and this is a bad day.
Now, it's hard to root against your partner, Alderman, but you may have to.
Well, we're a team.
Okay. Moving along to the second round, the quickest Pro Stock driver in the world, Kurt Johnson, first into the 6s. Not today. Apparently a line lock failure causes a red light, and that same Butch Abbott wins. Wasn't for bad luck lately. The Johnsons wouldn't have any.
Yeah, we've been having a heck of a time with this old dinosaur. Once we get our 698 car back for Brainerd, I think we'll be right on track.
Is that maybe a line lock failure? Or?
Either a line lock failure or the car rolled. I had it against a stop, and I was doing my job, and she just took off.
See you, Brainerd.
Thanks.
The elder Johnson didn't fare much better. He was already upset. He crashed a car Wednesday night in a match race on the way to Seattle. In the newer car, he gets hole-shotted as well by Steve Schmidt. Who'd have thunk it? And now let's talk about this man, Jim Yates, whose popularity is soaring after his second round victory. Now watch this video. In the near lane is the Dodge and Alderman, that 6-second car, a tremendous performance advantage over Yates. So after Alderman stages, Yates decides to challenge the patience of starter Buster Couch. Just as Buster decided to red light him, Yates moves in, interrupts that red light circuit, and leaves, catching Alderman with his pants and his RPMs down. Well, I guess you could make a case for getting used up on the starting line a little bit, huh?
Well, you know, that's racing, Steve. I should have had my motor up, you know, a little bit before Jim come in. I just didn't have my motor up when the tree was activated.
Did you feel like he took a long time to stage there?
Well, that's part of it. When someone's faster than you, I'd do the same thing to him.
And has. I think Jim Yates knows he'll never again make that little trick work against that same Darrell Alderman. So here's what we've got. No Dodges in the Final Four for the first time this year, nobody named Johnson, and 3 drivers who have never won a national event. The only one in the Final Four that has is Mark Powick.
We're looking at Tommy Johnson Jr. He's getting ready to go. He faces Mike Dunn in Top Fuel Racing in round number 2. The 1994 NHRA Northwest Nationals is being brought to you by Allied Signals Autolite Spark Plug. Guaranteed for 2 years, no matter how far you go. Here's Frank Bradley, the super tuner that has joined the Darrell Gwynn team. He hopes his driver, Mike Dunn, will prevail. Welcome back to Seattle, Washington in the Northwest Nationals, and this is Top Fuel Eliminator round number 2. Mike Dunn in the La Victoria Salsa car against Tommy Johnson Jr. in the Mopar Express Lube entry. It was 1 year ago that TJ won this same race. Coming into round number 2 of competition, here are the standings in the Winston points chase. Scott Coletta ahead of Joe Amato, then Connie Coletta, Don Prudhomme, Corey McClenathan rounds out the top 5. Tommy Johnson Jr. is currently in the number 9 spot in the Winston chase. TJ qualified number 8 at a 485 and beat Michael Brotherton in the first round. Mike Dunn is currently 7th in the Winston points chase. He has the lane choice. He prevailed by just a few thousandths of a second. Remember, it was in round number 1 that Eddie Hill had the severe tire shake. That let Dunn go on for the victory. Johnson's run was not a thing of beauty in the first round, but it was enough to get him here into round number 2 of competition. TJ has quite an honor to his credit. He is the 2nd fastest driver in this sport at over 306 miles an hour. Easily handling Dunn. Tommy runs a 491 at 287 miles an hour, and his hopes for a repeat title here at Seattle remain intact. Back at the starting line, the next pair getting ready to start the burnouts. The Skull Bandit, driven by Don Prudhomme. Prudhomme qualified very, very well in this race. His opponent here in the second round of competition, the McDonald's dragster, driven by young Corey McLenithan. Corey Mack is really just getting started into a great career in drag racing. Prudhomme calling it quits after the '94 season. Now to the far end and Steve.
TJ, that may be the last round you'll get through with a 491.
Well, yeah, we were awful lucky here last year, and it's continuing. 2 rounds today. The car's running so. It's got 70s. We'll need them next round.
You better.
And what he may find is it's going to be tough to reach the 70s as the racetrack is getting hotter. Let's leave here the crew chief. He's pointing Corey Mack back into the spot he wants him in. The last time these two drivers met was in the final round of the Winston Invitational back in April, and it was quite a staging battle. Don Prudhomme won that one. Corey Mack qualified number 7 at a 484 and beat Shelly Anderson with a 486 in the first round. The Snake qualified number 2 at a 479. He beat Jim Head with a 489 in the first round. That gives Corey Mack the choice of lanes. Corey, who's been struggling for the entire mid part of the season after a really great kickoff to the 1994 year, has selected the lane nearest our cameras. That's where most of the quicker drivers, those who have the lane choice, have moved. No staging battle here. Oh, and a great race as by a half a car length, Don Prudhomme beats Corey McLenithan, a 488 to a 499. The speed for the winning effort, 284. As we watch again in replay, a giant starting line advantage for Corey Mack. But as he advanced down track, his problems began to multiply. Look at the car in the near lane. See all the raw fuel coming out of the left-hand side of the engine? That is a drop cylinder. He's down on power. That let Prudhomme slip by for the win.
First words out of the Snake's mouth, who won? You did.
That cool, man. I'll tell you, I went in first and gave it everything I had. I don't know, it was close down here.
I didn't like your chances about 100 feet into the drag race.
I didn't like it either. No, I was, what can I tell you? I haven't been on my game lately. Maybe I can pick it up a little later. Okay. Car saved me.
Can't say I didn't make it fair. I gave you plenty of time. You already put them
both those drivers liked to stage last, but it was Prudhomme that went on in and got the staging process underway. Here's a battle of the Titans. Kenny Bernstein in his brand new Budweiser King up against the American International Airways car, tuned by that man Dick LaHaye and driven by the Winston points leader Scott Coletta. What an incredible string Coletta has. 4 victories in a row. He qualified number 4 at a 482, beat Pat Austin in the first round. Bernstein qualified number 5 at a 483. He beat Bob Vandergriff Jr. in round number 1 and holds the lane choice as he had quick ET in the first round, that great 479. Scotty's got to be thinking about a week ago when he defeated Kenny Bernstein in the finals down at Sears Point. You saw it here on ESPN. And he does it again for 2 weeks in a row. Coletta prevailing over Bernstein. This was one great drag race. Listen to the times. 485 for Scott Coletta at 298. 486 at 294 for Bernstein. And I don't think there's a bit of question in anyone's mind. Bernstein is definitely back. This race could have gone either way, but it was Scotty getting a slight advantage off the starting line. Then he was able to hold on to it with the performance built into that race car by tuner Dick LaHaye. There's the margin of victory.
Was the wing change a factor at all, do you think?
Oh, no, same type of wing, exactly as ours. No problem at all. We just didn't run quite quick enough, and, Scott and them ran a little bit better.
He's got a horse he can race with now, though.
And, Steve, the interesting thing about it, Bernstein will probably make that horse run quicker. We'll be right back. Back at Seattle in the NHRA Northwest Nationals, that's Al Hoffman with a wave to our cameras as he heads to the staging lanes, getting ready for round number 2 of Funny Car. We have one race left in the second round of Top Fuel competition, and here is Joe Amato in the Team Valvoline entry. The interesting question here is, can they run good after literally vaporizing their fuel system in that gigantic engine explosion that occurred in round number 1? Good to note that our onboard camera survived. It'll be there whatever happens this round. Here is Connie Coletta. He's the wallet behind the two-car American International Airways team. There's an interesting sidelight to this race, and it centers primarily on the crew chief for Connie Coletta, that man, Tim Richards. He wrenched into the number 11 qualifying spot at 495, and he beat Blaine Johnson in the first round. Meanwhile, Joe Amato qualified number 3 at a 481 and beat Del Worsham in the first round with a quicker 480. That was his crew chief, Jimmy Brock. Tim Richards used to wrench for Joe Amato and took him to 4 Winston Championship crowns. Brock, of course, was the crew chief a year ago for Corey Mack when Corey McLenithan was running so good as an independent. And a great run for Joe Amato after all the problems. Amato 485 at 295 miles an hour. Lots of smoke, but it's all coming out of the exhaust headers as Don Prudhomme and Joe Amato will meet up in the final 4 with Joe holding the lane choice with the 485. Meantime, 2 youngsters go at it, Tommy Johnson Jr. and Scott Coletta. Scott holding the lane choice here with his 485. Well, let's take away about 175 inches in wheelbase and put a fiberglass body over some 5,000 nitro-burning horsepower. It's time for Funny Car, and going into round number 2, John Force has a big lead over Al Hoffman. Chuck Etchells, Cruz Pedregon, and Casey Spurlock round out the top 5. Our first pair in round number 2 finds Mark Oswald at the wheel of the In-N-Out Burger car up against the McDonald's Oldsmobile, driven by Pedregon. Cruz qualified number 3 at a 507 and beat Gary Densham in the first round, while Mark Oswald qualified number 6, using the talents of his crew chief Bill Schultz to advantage of 516. He beat Casey Spurlock in the first round. Pedregon with the lane choice again over here in the lane nearest our cameras. The drivers tell us it's just a little bit smoother. That's why the guy that has the choice exercises it with that lane. Oh, and up in smoke. He may not have had the bumps, but he definitely had the loss of traction. Pedregon smokes the tires. Oswald slowing just a bit to a 524 at 277 miles an hour. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Seattle. Joe Amato taking a quick break. He's signing a few autographs as his crew gets the car ready to face Don Prudhomme in the semifinals of Top Fuel. That'll be coming up a little bit later on today. Right now, we're in round number 2 of Funny Car competition, and it is Al Hoffman in the Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge. As you saw in our lineup of the Winston points chase in the top 5, Hoffman is the closest to John Force. He and his crew chief, Tommy Anderson, that's Tommy using the emergency hatch as a fan to get the smoke out of the inside of the car. No, they've got to keep winning if they ever hope to catch Force. Here is the only Mustang-bodied car in Funny Car competition. Gordy Bonin wheeling the Smokin' Joe's entry to a 514 in qualifying. That put him number 5. Hoffman qualified 4th at a 510. Hoffman beat Bolger in the first round. Bonin whipped up on Scusa, but earned the lane choice by only 4 thousandths of a second, as these were 2 of those cars that ran 514s in the first round. What a race indeed to the finish line. Hoffman there first at a 522 at 287. The time's dropping off just a bit. It's getting hotter. The sun's beating down on this racetrack. One of the patented long burnouts that the crowds absolutely love, coming from John Force in the Castrol Chevy Lumina. He is up against the Pisano car driven by Dale Baldy. Burnout's designed to heat those tires up to operating temperatures to gain the maximum traction. To the far end, it's Steve.
When these things start smoking the tires that last 300 feet, there's not much you can do as a driver. You agree with that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I went after the brake a little bit, but I was worried. You know, we tried to calm it down a little bit on the top. It's making a real big power up there, but we got a win light for Western Auto on Slick 50 and counting points. And Gordy, see you later.
Al Al Hoffman keeping the point standings in mind, as every driver does. And John Force knows that now the pressure is on him. He's got to keep winning if he hopes to stop Hoffman from getting closer. Here is the Pisano team. Dale Paldy at the wheel. They had a supercharger explosion in qualifying that set back their effort just a bit. They ran 5:16, blowing the blower off of it, beat Richard Hartman in the first round. Force qualified number 2 with a 5:06. His opponent that fell in round number 1 was Gary Clapshaw. And the question here is, by virtue of losing a lot of the qualifying time on the racetrack, can the Pisano team reach deep enough to beat John Force? In round number 1, Force had low ET of eliminations thus far at a 5:10, but so far everybody else has been running in the teens, including Paldy, who had a 5:17. Oh, and John Force was late. Paldy goes up in smoke, and Force just sort of idles it across. In addition to brain fade, he also had mechanical problems. Look at the time, 5:74 at 180 miles an hour. If ever John Force was vulnerable in a round of competition, it came here. For an inexplicable reason, Force just sat there. Look at the advantage that Paldy had in our replay. But unfortunately for Dale, the car went up in smoke, could not hold traction, and Force was able just to motor on through and take a most important round win. Here's a happy guy. Chuck Etchels at the wheel of the Kendall GT1 Dodge, qualified number 1. Performance-wise, the closest to John Force this weekend, and now Force may be having problems.
Force man, something happened up there besides you watching the yellow light.
Well, that was something, wasn't it? I reached over to shove my valves down, and I was telling Coyle earlier, when we warmed the car up, the valve was sticking, and I went to shove my valve down to roll in, and the car rolled, the valve wouldn't go, and that changed concentration, and that's what wounded her, because in his tree come, I left, and I had one pump on and one off. That baby ain't going to run like that, but I don't know what else to do but hit the throttle. Thinking don't even come into play anymore.
Did it ever?
Well, you may not have heard it, but John Force said nope. Well, John is still in competition. Chuck Etchels has one thing to contend with. Not only this tricky racetrack, his crew chief John Medlin hopes he's got it solved, but the Moon Eyes car of Kenji Okazaki. His opponent here knows that his crew chief and car owner Jim Dunn has been able to master this racetrack before. Okazaki qualified very well in the number 9 spot at a 5:18, beat Jim Epler in the first round with a 5:17, while Etchels qualified first at a 5:05. He beat Wynn Bazemore with a quicker 5:14. That gives him the choice of lanes, and as we look out the windshield of the Kendall Dodge Avenger, you see the view that the drivers see from inside these fiberglass funny cars. Staging process underway. That is starter Buster Couch between the two. He throws the switch to send them on their way. Look at Kenji out in front. Traylon Sparks, it appears a header has fallen down on Kenji's car. And look at the time. 5:10 at 274 miles an hour. A lot of smoke coming out of the race car on the left-hand bank, but it's all out of the headers. The sparks you see are from the metal contacting the pavement. That is a header pipe that has fallen down as Kenji Okazaki thoroughly whips Chuck Etchels here in round number 2. The final 4, Okazaki holding the lane choice over Al Hoffman, the guy second in points to John Force, who will be racing Mark Oswald in the final 4, and Mark holds the choice of lanes.
Kenji, this thing was so hot, I think it melted the headers.
I never seen it like this before. I mean, I saw the spark, inside the car. I mean, I knew that headers, I had it, yesterday, same problem. So I had an idea.
How about a 5:10?
5:10? Let's step up a little bit, huh? I mean, that's pretty good. And when I was a panic, Daytona hasn't been semi a long time, I mean, it's so glad to go that.
Welcome back, Kenji-san.
Thank you.
Kenji from Tokyo, Japan. What a great addition to this sport. We're back at the Northwest Nationals. I'm Dave McClelland along with Steve Evans, and here come the factory hot rods, heating up their tires just like the big nitro burners do. This is a race between the upset kings in the near lane. The Dynagear car driven by Steve Schmidt. Who did he whip up on in round number 2? None other than the reigning Winston champ Warren Johnson. this is Butch Abbott. He's got a pair of upsets to his credit. Scott Jeffrey on the points leader in the first round, and Kurt Johnson in the second round. All this from Abbott's 15th qualifying position. Schmidt qualified number 6 at his 7:11 and holds the choice of lanes here by a mere 5/1000th of a second. Schmidt is in the engine building business with his partner Dale Ike, and a lot of the racers are starting to use the Schmidt and Ike motors for power plants here in Pro Stock competition. Schmidt the last to stage. Great reaction time for Schmidt. He makes it pay off with a quicker elapsed time as well. 7:13 at 192 to Abbott's 7:15 at 192, and Schmidt into his first ever final round appearance. No longer afraid, I guess, to beat up on the guys that use his engine. The Dynamax car. This is the Pontiac Formula Firebird driven by Jim Yates. His opponent is a man that has visited the winner's circle here before, back in 1992. Mark Powick, a former champion here at the NHRA Northwest Nationals. At the far end, here's Steve and Steve.
You know, you've kind of changed your mental look at this thing a bit to improve your driving.
Yes, I have. Because of my engine customers and my commitment to them all running well, it's really hurt my program, and we've finally made a conscientious decision to do things a little differently 3 races ago at Denver, and I think it showed right away.
Let's see if we get another first-time finalist, Mac.
That's a distinct possibility, as Jim Yates definitely used maybe just a bit of chicanery to pull off that gigantic upset of Darrell Alderman in round number 2. For Powick, he has had consistent performances. The Summit Racing Olds qualified 5th at a 7:11. He beat Bob Glidden and George Marnell in earlier rounds, while Yates qualified 8th at a 7:12 and beat Mike Thomas in the first round. Earlier, Steve followed up on the Yates-Alderman story.
This is the switch that controls the Christmas tree. This is the man that controls the switch. Tell me about the race Alderman and Yates. You tried to red light him.
Yes, he was too late getting in. He took his time, and he was, in my opinion, he's supposed to have red lighted. I threw the switch, and the stage light wasn't on, but some way something happened. But in my mind, I red lighted him. I was supposed to.
Yeah, he out-tricked you, Buster.
Oh, maybe he did, but he better be on his toes.
Timing is everything.
And as you said earlier, Steve, I don't think that's going to happen to Buster again. And I don't think Yates would try the same tricks again. A little psychological war always going on between these drivers, either at the starting line or back in the pit. They're kind of jabbing at one another all the time, trying to get just a bit of an advantage. If it is psychological, it makes the other guy late. Well, you saw it pay off for Yates against Alderman. Will it work against Powick? No, Yates stayed first. About a fender length at a 7:14, 192. He staged first and left first. A great reaction time. 7:15, the losing time for Powick at 192 miles an hour. So we know one thing for sure. We're going to have a first-time winner in Pro Stock. Will it be Jim Yates or Steve Schmidt? Schmidt holds the lane choice in the finals. Coming up later. Meantime, Jerry Amato getting husband Joe ready to go for the Final Four in Top Fuel Eliminator. That'll be coming up in just a few moments as well. Right now, let's go down to the far end of the racetrack and join Steve Evans.
You lost lane choice. Is that a big deal?
That's the only thing bad that's happened to me today. I'm not going to complain now.
You're still on a high after that Alderman deal.
Oh, I tell you, we've just been running so hard here today. I mean, the crew's been working so hard to get this thing together every round, and every time we put it together, it comes back faster, so we're happy.
You're going to need another good start. Steve Schmidt is driving his brains out.
Oh, we got a couple hunters left in this thing. I'm not worried about it. We'll just do our best when we get up there, and I think we got enough performance to run with him.
Third final of the year, Mac.
Steve, maybe this time it's the charm. Who knows? As he heads back to the pit. That's his wife, Tony Yates, one of the hardest working women in motorsports today. Spelling is not a priority here in Seattle, but the snake certainly is. In the midst of his final strike tour, the driver of the Skoal Bandit, after 30 years in this sport, deciding to call it quits. At the end of 1994, Don Prudhomme will retire as a driver from the sport of NHRA Championship drag racing. Here in the Final Four, this side of the ladder at least, has got a pair of veterans, Joe Amato and Prudhomme going off for the right to advance to the championship round. On paper, Amato looks a little bit better, at least more consistent. An 81 in qualifying, a 4.80 in the first round when he blew the motor, then coming back with a great 4.85. Prudhomme was quicker in qualifying, but slower during elimination. And he smokes the tires. Here comes Joe Amato dropping a cylinder just before the finish line, but no disaster this time. The Team Valvoline car advances to the championship round with a 4.84 at 291 miles an hour. A run like that makes you wonder, what would it have run if it had not dropped the cylinder and lost nearly 800 horsepower? Here's the Winston points leader. Scott Coletta at the wheel of the American International Airways car. His opponent, the guy that is second to Scott as far as speed on the racetrack goes, Tommy Johnson Jr. with the Mopar Express Lube entry. He has one goal in mind. That is not to be second at the finish line. Scott is after an incredible string. Dick LaHaye, his crew chief, has tuned him to 4 consecutive wins in a row. Steve?
Thank you, guys. You did a good job.
Joe Amato thanking his motor, and well, you should. It's all in one piece to a 4.84.
Well, the team is struggling all day. We've been fighting it all day, but I guess this track owes us after that first round. We blew the top off this thing, but all we can say is we're in the final and anything can happen.
They say consistency wins drag races. What has LaHaye done for his driver? Giving him a 4.82 in qualifying, a 4.83 in the first round, and a 4.85 in round number 2. Tommy's not far off. 4.85 in qualifying, then a 4.99 and a 4.91. Just enough to definitely give the advantage to Scott Coletta. Can he make it pay off? A red light by Tommy Johnson Jr. Oh, TJ was just a hair too quick at the starting line. The red light indicating instant disqualification. 4.88 at 290 miles an hour. Scott Coletta heads to the final round with a possibility to make history once again. Should he win, and 5 in a row, nobody has ever done that before. Look at the red light glowing and the disappointment that has to be heavy on Tommy Johnson's heart as he blew away a chance to race Joe Amato for the title of the Northwest Nationals. King Amato holds the choice of lanes. Down at the far end of the track as Scotty takes his hat off, here's Steve.
That boy from Iowa red-lighted.
I know, I saw it. Yeah, I knew he was going to go after it, and he usually does good up there. I guess he got a little overexcited, didn't need to.
You lost lane choice with a 4.88. Jimmy Prock with Amato says he's got room to step on that thing. How about you?
I'm sure Dick's got room too. We'll see.
That's 19.
19 consecutive round victories, the most ever by a top fuel driver, and it is Scott Coletta holding the mark and a chance to add to it. Here's a group that would like to add to their win streak, John Force and crew. As has been traditional on the NHRA Winston Championship Trail this season, Don Prudhomme, whenever he goes out of competition, gets a chance to come back in front of the fans to say so long after a brilliant career in drag racing. And that career was chronicled in the pages of National Dragster. You can get National Dragster by joining NHRA. You get a patch, a pin, a decal, a rule book, and a whole lot more. And if you call today to order for $52 a year, you'll get a free copy of Diamond P's home video, Drag Racing 93. Call today. John Force getting ready to duel with Mark Oswald for the right to advance to the final. Oswald in the In-N-Out Burger Penhall International car has got to play the role of a stopper. He's got a big advantage. He has the choice of lanes by virtue of the quicker elapsed time. Remember the previous round when John Force just lost it all on the starting line? I'm certain Austin Coyle, his crew chief, was not happy with the performance of his driver. 1 round to go. But then again, it could have been partially mechanical. We heard John describe the difficulty he had in changing the valve setting on the fuel control system. Well, you make one mistake and you make up for it a round later. Look at this, John Force. What can you say? 509 at 289 miles an hour. in absolutely the warmest part of the day when it should be the most difficult for a funny car to traverse the 1,320 feet. John Force just runs a 5.09 in the lane that is not supposed to be the best. That gives rise for Al Hoffman to have lots of hope over there in the Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge. He is racing Kenji Okazaki, and Kenji, remember, blasted out the 510 around previously. Down at the far end of the racetrack, this is going to be a much different John Force.
Well, John, with an 09 in the quote-quote bad lane, this train is back on track.
Hey, I even left the starting line.
And on dime.
They were firing me here a little while ago. I don't even know what happened, but yeah, you know, the old brain's plenty mysterious, but I'll heap, she ran down through there and it started to work again. The blindness went away, but I tell you what, a lot of praise. Don't say drivers don't earn their money, because I did in the last round, but this round I did okay.
Indeed.
And John so did that race car at a 5.09. Absolutely stunning performance. I don't think anybody expected a time that quick here in the Final Four. Kenji Okazaki, the Moon Eyes Dodge in the near lane. The Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge, you're on board with Al Hoffman. Can Hoffman keep pace? Yes, again, the header falling off on Kenji's car just at the finish line. Hoffman slips past a 5.16 at 292. He only needs to find a 10th. He may have kept pace in the wind department, but certainly not in the performance side. Kenji gave him more than he may have wanted. Look at Okazaki and Hoffman. The car's just scratching for traction. At this point, Kenji has got a substantial lead. Then once again, the header on the right-hand side, falling down onto the racetrack. That's all the sparks you see. And Hoffman squeezes it out by just a half a car length. The pairing in our finals of Funny Car. John Force and Al Hoffman, number 1 and 2 in the points chase. Force with the lane choice.
Al, that little yellow car put up a fight, didn't it?
Well, I seen him the whole way. I think it was, we left good together. Half track, we were side by side. 3/4 track, he was pulling ahead of me. We started to smoke the tires, and I grabbed the brake, and next time I looked up, we were in front of him, so.
5.16 won't match wheels with John Force right now.
Nah, John's going to have to beat himself. I mean, that guy's tough out here. He's got the best crew in the business. Bernie and Austin, boy, my hats are off to them guys. And he earned the world championship this year if he keeps going like this.
Leave on him.
We'll see.
Well, Force stumbled once today, maybe again. We're down to the finals at Seattle and the NHRA Northwest Nationals. Jimmy Brock and crew getting Joe Amato's car ready for the top fuel race of the day. He is coming up against Scott Coletta in the finals. Right now it is pro stock time. One of these two drivers will go into the winner's circle for the first time in their careers. Will it be the Dynagear car driven by Steve Schmidt or the Dynamax car driven by Jim Yates? Pontiac versus Oldsmobile. Earlier, Steve had a chance to talk to Steve Schmidt, a first-time finalist.
Your first ever final round, Steve. Can you mentally trick yourself that this is just another race? It's not.
We didn't expect to go this far. We're having fun, Steve, to be real honest with you. Absolutely no pressure over here. We've already got the car ready. The crew's doing a super job. I'm real proud to be associated as such fine people as Dynagear.
So you can go up there relaxed, even though it's your first time?
I'm having a ball. I can't wait. I wish it was right now.
It's coming up.
Thank you.
Well, we'll get a chance to see if Steve Schmidt can live up to his expectations of relaxation on the starting line. As these two cars enter into the staging procedure, the driver has really got to concentrate on that tree. You're sitting there with your clutch in. Your engine, when the cars are staged, is up against a rev limiter. The one thing you got to do is dump the clutch and let your finger off the line lock at just the right moment. Schmidt, the last to stage. Schmidt did it all right. He left first. He got to the finish line first. He had the quicker elapsed time by a 1/10 of a second, a 7:13 to a 7:23. And Steve Schmidt, capitalizing on his first ever final round appearance, makes it to the winner's circle for the first time in his career. Watch in replay. 0.02 of a second advantage off the starting line, going to Steve Schmidt in the near lane. As they go down track, Yates has some problems getting a hold of the pavement. His car moving around on him just a bit too much. Smoothness pays off in drag racing, staying in the center of your lane. Steve Evans.
Few drivers in Pro Stock history have ever won in their first national event final. You have, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll shake that in.
I'm kind of lost for words, but once again, I want to thank the fine folks at Dynagear, my wife back at home that unfortunately couldn't be here, Mark, my crew chief, Terry Adams, my son Michael, my son back at home, Junior. Everybody else that has worked on this mess for the last 6 or 7 years.
Your great driving was a big factor.
Thank you. We've worked real hard on that the last 3 weeks.
Lane choice didn't hurt either. He was fighting that other lane.
Where'd he go?
Who cares?
Good point. Thank you.
You betcha. We'll see this face many times, fans.
And I think he is relaxed, just like he said he would be. Scott Jeffrey still got the lead in the Winston points chase, but not by much over Darrell Alderman. WJ's third, Jim Yates fourth, and Kurt Johnson number 5 after 12 of the 18 events here in the 1994 season. The American and Canadian flags captured rather uniquely through the body of John Force as he gets set for the finals. It is funny car finals time at Seattle International Raceway in the NHRA Northwest Nationals. And heating up those huge Goodyear tires is none other than John Force, the leader in the chase. Here's the guy that is closest to him, trying to keep pace. The Western Auto Slick 50 Dodge driven by Al Hoffman. Earlier, Steve had a chance to visit his pit area and ask the crew what they're going to do to win this thing.
You heard Al Hoffman say John Force will have to beat himself. We can't. Well, his crew has a slightly different attitude, right, guys?
That's right.
Look at this. They have fed it a brand new clutch. That's a bunch of bucks. I wouldn't even put a price tag on 2 brand new aluminum Brad Anderson heads. They're throwing everything they've got at John Force. Hang on, Al.
He hopes to be riding a rocket ship, but the numbers on the papers don't indicate that he's got much of a chance. He has run consistently good, ranging from a 5.10 to a 5.22. But John Force, with the exception of that one faux pas, if you will, in round number 2, has been awesome. A 5.06 to qualify, a 5.10, and a 5.09 in the previous round. He and his crew chief, his co-crew chief, Bernie Federley, converse by two-way radio, so he knows what's going on. Look out the window. You see Force just drive away from Al Hoffman. There's Bernie and Austin Coyle together, as John Force already knows that he ran the low elapsed time of the meet of 5.03 at 291. Not only did he take the win, but the very valuable 50 bonus points that goes to the low elapsed time of the race, and he set it in the final round. Hoffman and crew did everything possible. They had another consistently good time at a 5.18, but Force was brilliant on this run. 5.03, 291 at the finish, and John Force wins again and again and again.
6 wins this year. You cap it with a 5.03, best of the weekend.
It was really exciting. It sounds like maybe we're a little bit greedy when you're racing Al Hoffman, guys like that know how to win. We need those extra points, and Coyle was going to push it to try to get that 50 away from Etchells, and he got it. We're excited, but Castrol, all the folks, Jolly Rancher, we're just doing our job, but we're having a lot of fun doing it.
Al Hoffman wants to say a word. We'll let you go.
Congratulations. Everybody.
Well, it's hard to tell who won and who lost there. That was one great drag race. John Force winning it and adding to his points lead over Hoffman. Chuck Etchells is third, Bruce Bedregon fourth, and Casey Spurlock rounding out the top 5 in the Winston chase. Now it is time for Top Fuel, the last race of the day, and the Team Valvoline dragster driven by Joe Amato comes in with lane choice over the Winston points leader, Scott Coletta. Amato, from our onboard camera, looking down on that engine that exploded in round number 1 of competition, has selected the lane nearest the cameras. But that man in the red shirt is the true wizard of this race car. Dick LaHaye, the Winston champ as a driver back in 1987, has come into his own as certainly the premier crew chief of the 94 season. He has got Scott Coletta in the final round going for his 5th consecutive Top Fuel title. Scott has won a remarkable 19 consecutive rounds of racing, the most ever by any Top Fuel driver. Joe Amato has a chance to win his first race of the 94 season. Joe Scott Coletta, he falls back. Joe Amato wins it. 485 at 295 miles an hour, and somebody has finally put a stop to the string of Scott Coletta. Joe Amato gives himself a round of applause, a thumbs up. He knows what he's accomplished. Look at this race, a great lead by Amato. Scotty running into problems right off the starting line. A drop cylinder, the raw fuel coming out of the motor. You can see it pouring out of the left-hand bank. He's down on power. He knows it doesn't do any good to continue on. Shuts it off and lets Amato go to the finish line uncontested. What a great win for Joe Amato. Steve's with him right now.
Joe Amato ends the longest winning streak in Top Fuel history. Another 485, fantastic.
I can't say enough about the Jimmy Prock and the Fashings and the Walshes. I mean, they did such a tremendous job. My wife, Jerry, everybody, my sponsors are hanging with me. You know, we had a long drought, Steve. It's been over a year since we won a race, but the Valvoline, Dynamax, Autolite, TRW, Mr. Gasket, they all hung with me, plastic coat paint. They had to be making up stories about how I was going to come back, and thank God we came back, and the boys did a good job. And, you know, Scott's been a terror. The only bad thing is he won all them races, and it was going to be real tough to try and overtake him for the World Championship.
There's a few left.
Well, there's a few races left, and our cars are running consistent. You can come out and run 485 and 483 all day, especially after blowing the top of the blower off in the first round. I can't say enough. I have a new pair of Snoopy shorts, and maybe they were a little lucky for me this weekend. I don't know. But, you know, the team did such a good job. They put a lot of pressure on Joe Amato to try and do it. I'd like to thank all my fans out there and all my friends back home. And good way to end the 3-week sweep here. At least we come home with a win.
Enjoy the evening.
And enjoy it he will, as Joe Amato touched on the key to success, and that is consistency. He is second to Scott in the Winston chase. Don Prudhomme has moved up to number 3, Connie Coletta down to 4th, and Corey Mack rounds out the top 5. The 1994 NHRA Northwest Nationals has been brought to you by Quaker State, the intelligent oil for longer life, and by McDonald's. What you want is what you get at McDonald's today. What a great weekend of racing here at Seattle International Raceway. For Steve Evans, I'm Dave McClellan. We hope you enjoyed it. See you soon. Coverage of the NHRA Northwest Nationals has been a production of Diamond P Sports in association with ESPN.